And welcome to another episode of What the Tech. I'm your host, Rolando, and over there to this side on the Magic Square, somebody who absolutely needs no introduction, but he will get one. Dave Kelly.
Hey, Rolando, happy Friday, my friend. How are you?
Happy Friday to you. Are you? It's Friday. The weekend is almost starting, and if you're listening to us today, your work is also wrapping up. So grab a coffee, your favorite beverage, sit back, relax. We have a really good one today. What, you don't think so, Dave?
No, I think we have a great one today.
I'm looking forward to our guest today. We'll have Todd Miller on from Nitel, so he's going to drop some knowledge on us today. We actually plucked him out of this bird, we plucked him out of a cage to get him out here today. I'm looking forward to what he's got to say here, and we'll introduce him here in a little bit. But first, let's jump into it. I want to ask Todd so many things. I don't know if we're going to cram it all into this one session, but we're going to try. Ori, are we ready with the trivia? Yes, let's go to the trivia first. All right. So during COVID-19, when, if you think back to 2020, we're already in 2021. It seems like 10 years ago. But which of these companies first announced that workers could go home essentially for a good long time, some of them permanently? Which one of these publicly made that announcement first? Was it Facebook, Shopify, Google, Microsoft, or Twitter? Stay tuned to the end and we'll reveal the answer. All right. So, before we get to Todd, I want to do something we haven't done before. I want to recognize a couple of our special fans and people that are following us that keep on hitting that like button and they keep retweeting and they keep sharing. I want to give a special shout out to Zach in Ohio. Zach, what, Zach? Zach, you know who you are. You know who you are. In Ohio. I want to also give a special shout out to Yvonne in New Jersey for tuning in and subscribing and watching us on YouTube. Nancy in Georgia. Shout out to Nancy. Nancy. Nora in Panama. Nora, come on, man. You got to be feeling a lot warmer than we are. I was out just walking my dog, and it was a cold one out, and my hands were freezing. So I'm glad I thawed out before we started. And two more, I want to give a shout out to Callie W in LA. She always likes our stuff on Instagram. Callie, thank you very much. We appreciate you. We love you. And last but certainly not least, somebody that is a fan of the show. I would almost call her a super fan. Sharina in Baltimore. Sharina! Holler, holler, holler at you, girl. All right. So thank you to those. We didn't get to everybody. We're just going to periodically drop some knowledge and recognize some of our fans and super fans. So big ups to everybody that's tuning in and watching us. And if you're watching us live, you get to watch us on Amazon, Facebook, Google. Oh, wait, not Google yet. Facebook, Amazon, and YouTube. Something coming down the road with Google. I hope that's announced later. But anyways, and if you're on Amazon, you get to watch the products right below you today in the carousel. We've got several featured for you. Dave is working that, and he's making sure that you get to see some of those products that are going to be highlighted. And lastly, if you have questions for our guest today, whether it's myself, Dave, or Todd that's going to be on with us shortly, go ahead, chat us. Let us know where you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you. And we'd love to engage with you. We always welcome fan feedback and comments. So, Dave.
Rolando.
Today, we bring on a guest, Todd Miller from Nitel. Ori, there we go. Let's show his pretty mug. Todd Miller, he is the vice president of Nitel. He is an industry expert when it comes to telecommunications. I can't wait till he comes on because I've got a ton of things I want to ask for him. He's got tons of accolades. The guy just knows what he's talking about. He's been around forever. We wanted to have him on the show to, especially at this time as we're going into the 1-year anniversary of pretty much being on lockdown. If you're remote working, and this is the guy we wanted to bring on today to bring us up to speed on what's going on. Let's bring on Todd Miller. Hey, Todd.
Hey guys, how are you? Thanks for having me today.
Hey, Todd,
All right,
thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us today. Hey Todd, I've got a ton of things I want to ask you because you're the kind of guy that probably knows what the heck is going on with companies that have people that are at home and employees and businesses that are doing well, some that aren't doing so well, and how they've pivoted. And before we get to your comments, I want to actually show you this clip from CNBC that had Mr. Wonderful, aka Kevin Leary from Shark Tank, and I want to get your reaction on the other side of the video. Ori, you want to go ahead and roll that?
Real world experience, Kevin. You're seeing this happen. You probably got different geographic locations, different businesses. What are you seeing?
Well, there's been some really interesting outcomes that I would have never anticipated. Nobody would force a large or small business to ever shut down and go remote. But we went into this pandemic with some remarkable technology. We use it, and I watch use it every day, and businesses have been forced to work this way. And now have been doing it for months, some of them very successfully. And there's going to be some impairment to some sectors of the economy as a result. I call it the unintended. I'll give you an example. Some of my businesses have hundreds of locations in New York, Florida, Texas, California, that kind of thing. We're probably not going to reopen the marginal retail outlets. We've been negotiating with REITs about 3 months. We are also going to take a really hard look, and this is where I think it gets fascinatingly interesting. And one of the reasons the market is so buoyant, I see a new America 2.0 that's much more efficient in how it runs its businesses, because across our portfolio, we're going to offer about 20% of our employees the right to work at home perpetually, particularly in areas like compliance, accounting, logistics. If they wish not to commute anymore, we're agreeing to upgrade their internet. We're going to provide them with equipment, and they can stay at home and do their jobs. And what I think is incredible, we're getting people working 10 hours a day right now at home, more than we're asking them to, because they don't have anything else to do, and our productivity has gone through the roof, all at the expense of the landlord. That sector, I think, is going to have some significant challenges, because we're going to reduce our square footage probably by 20%, and we think, don't know this yet, but I think we can save 5 to 7% free cash flow across the portfolio. I'm really excited about America we're going to have. We're going to save a ton of money.
Well, there you have it. Mr. Wonderful, a lot to unpack there. I wanted to get your reaction before I ask you any questions. What do you think about what you just saw? And that was back in May, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely agree with everything he said. You know, again, and this is something that I think we can all relate to and answer on a personal level, whether it's a spouse, a significant other, whether it's a peer or somebody that you know in various industries, or whether it's the customers that we're helping, to utilize technology to assist them during this time. We're hearing the same thing from all those different various areas about organizations that may not be going full remote. Some may certainly, but are certainly taking a very hard look at how they've conducted business traditionally, and have learned some valuable things. You know, Dave and I were talking a couple minutes ago about this kind of same topic and many organizations probably thought about this in some capacity for some amount of time, but how do you do a proof of concept of moving your entire workforce remote? And so one of the interesting dynamics of the pandemic has been allowing organizations, again, with no option, to essentially vet that ability to do so. And many of them have found that they can be very, very successful even with the remote workforce.
Are you finding any differences between different industries where some are more resilient with deploying or redeploying, or are you just finding that it just varies case by case?
Well, I absolutely think some verticals are more predisposed to working efficiently, in a remote workplace. I mean, some of them are certainly going to be challenged. It really depends on the amount of, person-to-person contact that you might require. For instance, the auto industry is one of the more challenged from a car selling, and that's going to really change traditional values. We've seen some startups in that space over the last few years, and I think that's going to be an area that grows dramatically and causes a shift. Things like, financial areas are probably a little bit more challenged to work in a purely remote. Legal aspects, and then others such as retail can work very, very efficiently remote. Obviously, they've been sort of driven in that direction for many years already.
Now, do you think that remote working is here to stay, and whether it's going to be, a permanent feature of companies, or you think we get back to normal and when people start flowing back to the office, it's going to be business as usual?
Well, I certainly think that some organizations have identified that they're going to maintain a large percentage of their workforce remote permanently. And some of them, frankly, have already announced that. I mean, companies like Google have already announced long-term plans to sustain remote workforces. I think other organizations are going to approach it a little bit more pragmatically. They're going to identify and use this data that they've gained over the last year to understand what areas of their business can work efficiently in this manner, and what groups within an organization perhaps need a little bit more on-site collaboration. Ultimately, either way, what we're going to see is a dramatic reduction in typical square footage for most organizations.
I read something somewhere, I can't recall where I read it, but the idea of being office-centric is over. In the traditional sense, and that's why I wanted to get your thoughts, because you work with, and Nitel works with, folks across many spectrums and different industries, and as they're working with some of these different industries and different clients, one of the things that I was curious is understanding is how the deployment of technologies is taking place. How has COVID impacted that, so that you can get remote workforce up and running, or even the technologies that would enable businesses to continue doing business in this challenging situation?
Well, where we've seen the greatest impact in the last year has been around access, quality, as I would state it, and security. Those are the three areas that most organizations have been primarily challenged. Access, fairly straightforward one. You've created an access or a network connectivity architecture around having people in seats in office space, and now suddenly they're working remotely. They're working out of homes. They may have no connectivity, or they may have broadband connectivity. Obviously, all access is not created equal. So there's challenges around that, and so we've helped organizations by helping them deploy access to their small office, home office workplaces. The quality has been something that organizations have struggled with as well. So again, you're trying to conduct business now. Many applications are sensitive to latency. Obviously, you've got voice now, which is being conducted over those same lesser quality broadband circuits. And where we've been able to assist customers there is by leveraging our Nitel Connect SD-WAN offering to extend the edge of the SD-WAN fabric for those organizations.
And Todd, can I get you, for those laymen that are not familiar with what SD-WAN means, because this was one of the things I wanted to ask you about, but you just jump right into it, so I love it. There are folks that may not, if they're not an IT manager, they may not know what that means. So just kind of high level, explain what SD-WAN means and why that is important to organizations as well as folks that are working from home.
Sure, absolutely. So SD-WAN stands for Software Defined Wide Area Networking. Now, of course, that's not going to tell you much more than if I just told you SD-WAN. What SD-WAN really represents is the convergence of multiple technologies into a single capability. So if you took things like multiple circuits, link aggregation, being able to combine bandwidth, if you took things like intelligent use of bandwidth, application, the ability to route and or handle applications differently, certainly security capabilities, and you converge those all into one solution and then define the nature of how you use those technologies and the configuration of them via software, then you would ultimately have SD-WAN.
So if somebody is working from home, is that something they can leverage today, or has SD-WAN changed since the pandemic, where it was really something that businesses were pushing in their offices for either backup purposes or resiliency, so that they would have multiple providers coming into the building? Touch on that, if that's changed at all for folks that may be working at home now. Is that something they can leverage and take advantage of?
Well, first off, absolutely, it's changed. Pre-pandemic, it was predominantly a wide area network solution that was deployed at traditional corporate locations, branch offices. Obviously, with the remote, with the workforce becoming remote, that has changed the application of that technology considerably. We're assisting organizations now with extending the edges of that SD-WAN environment into people's homes. So essentially putting SD-WAN devices, endpoints into people's homes, specifically to assist in the areas of manageability, but also coming back to that quality piece I mentioned, right? We talked about less quality bandwidth. We talked about greater reliance on voice over broadband, and the ability to use SD-WAN to be able to improve and/or improve the consistency, predictability, and quality of that experience.
So you hit on something that I like to hear, which is you're talking about voice, and we play in that arena all day long, right, Dave? And as we talk to customers and they're having problems with their connectivity, one of the things that they could also do is take advantage of the quality devices that we've got on our carousel on Amazon, right?
That's right.
And today we've got several featured for you today. What are we featuring today, Dave, on our carousel?
You know, the speakerphones are always really popular right now, so we're highlighting some of the EPOS products. That is the speakerphones, ESP30. Yealink is in here also with a speakerphone solution. We have some of our decked USB headsets that are wireless. We've been discussing these, and even for the traditional non-headset, non-speakerphone user, the Yealink W60 IP cordless IP telephone.
Oh, right. Well, and there you have it. So Amazon will send those out to you if you're an FBA Prime member and put it in your garage if you haven't seen those commercials. So take advantage of that. Those products are in stock and ready to ship right now. So Todd, I want to come back to you because this is something that tends to be the perpetual question when we're talking to customers. Sometimes they don't know that they have an issue on the network, and you know, they'll say, "Well, my speakerphone doesn't work anymore. It's really sounds echoey or bad." And really, at the heart of the matter, it is really the congestion or the network they're connected to from working from home. They may have lots of people at home, or the network itself isn't sufficient for them. I'd like you to touch on something that is a pain point to a lot of folks that are watching us today, which is why their networks are so slow. Maybe they upgraded to the fastest capable network that they have from their provider, whether it's Comcast, Verizon, or some other provider that's giving them internet at home. What are some of the reasons why folks at home who are remote working would have slow networks, even though they're paying for a so-called fast network?
Well, one of the biggest things certainly is that everybody's at home working, right? So basically what you took the amount of people that used to be at home during the business day because they were remote workforce, or, obviously maybe they had children in school, what have you. And now you essentially moved everyone into the remote workforce. And so, of course, there's increasingly more congestion on those same networks than there have been historically. Certainly home networks, which is one of the challenges that organizations are facing during this pandemic, is now they're asking people to work remotely on non-corporate IT networks. So home Wi-Fi, obviously very, very difficult and challenging to support and manage. All of those are contributing factors, as well as just the lesser typical consistency of broadband capabilities in general across the major carriers.
Well, so what you're saying is that there's just too many people at home for this for all the traffic that's going through all these networks. Is that right?
Well, it's certainly a contributing factor, that's for sure.
I see. And from the infrastructure perspective, from a carrier's perspective, I'm sure that when it came time to lay cable and fiber optic, a lot of the good stuff with a lot of pipes went to big corporate buildings and offices that housed a lot of people and servers, and not so much for people's homes. No?
Well, I think it just comes down to, again, the amount of congestion on the networks. Certainly broadband services from service providers and carriers leverage the same infrastructure for the most part that more corporate DIA or MPLS type solutions do. But certainly there is a prioritization of traffic that's done depending upon what level of service you've purchased. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to simply the amount of increased congestion and how contested the network is at any given time. You also think about the fact that people aren't just using their computers for the traditional things they did before the pandemic. Now you've added millions of video calls
Yeah,
every minute.
so talk about that. So if I'm, besides the hardware, obviously, if I have a really inexpensive webcam that's not up to snuff, like high streaming cameras and all that other stuff, the network really is what drives it. If you don't have a good quality bandwidth to push that out, you're not really going to get good quality video. On top of the fact that you may have a cheaper webcam or something like that.
Well, absolutely. And video obviously consumes significantly more bandwidth than voice does. And then depending upon what type of quality video you're trying to push through, I mean, in some cases, you may be trying to do 1080p or 4K video. All of that's requiring, much more bandwidth than a lesser quality video signal. And so you have, in addition, not just everyone working remotely, but now everyone's working remotely, but doing video calls where they used to do on-site meetings, and that's simply adding that much more traffic that service providers and carriers are trying to accommodate.
And what do you see from a direction standpoint? How are the carriers themselves? Obviously, the IT manager that's watching us, or the user or the remote worker at home that's listening to us. There's so much they can do, right? And at some point, the service providers may have to do some upgrades in order to accommodate this additional traffic. Or what are you hearing when you engage with on the carrier side of things?
Well, absolutely, and those upgrades are already in progress and have been. Certainly, the frontline type of organizations are not the only ones that are learning things from this pandemic and being forced to react to accommodate. The carriers themselves are upgrading their backbones and networks to reflect this new normal of how the employees typically work.
All right. Well, let's hope they keep upgrading, and maybe when people start returning to home, it provides some relief to some of those networks that are congested right now. Because I know that even we're streaming from our respective homes, we're kind of held hostage to some extent to what we're getting from our respective carriers, and it would be nice to know that they're upgrading, and this is nothing that they could flip a switch and everybody all of a sudden has more. It takes time, right? It could take years to have all the pieces in place to have sufficient broadband for everybody.
Well, certainly, those upgrades have already started. They're in progress. Some capacity increases have already been put in, and were put in early into the pandemic, and that's just going to be an ongoing process. At the same time, that they're going to want to continue to gauge the direction of the world in terms of, do we really move to a predominantly majority of employees working remotely, or does that do we have an increased amount of employees working remotely, but it's still a lesser percentage than those in the office? So they're going to continue to look at that very hard and gauge that in order to ensure that their upgrade strategies are aligned with that increased consumption.
That's an interesting. It's. We can only hope that the situation we're in the COVID-19 will tamp down and normalize and stabilize, so that we can at least return to some normal. I certainly, I miss traveling and seeing people. Dave, I don't know about you. I like going to some of these conferences and meeting with people like Todd and catching up with them, and I really miss doing some of that. What about you, Dave?
Yeah, it's so strange that we haven't been anywhere in almost a year. It is about a year anniversary since this whole thing started. I don't necessarily miss the act of packing and flying and staying in the hotel, but certainly the face-to-face handshakes, sitting down with people, getting to understand their business, how we can better work together. Yeah, networking has definitely changed for sure.
Well, and is it everybody's going to be I know that people want to, go back in and go to office, go to these gatherings. And then there's some I've talked to, probably Todd, you've you've run into this. What? I don't want to go back. This is much better than commuting every single day, or having, like for me, to go to the West Coast to the meetings. The 5-hour plane trip from DC to either Vegas or LA, and meeting with people out there. Where just flip on, like right now, if you flip on your camera and we start talking to each other.
Well, I definitely think that it's going to continue to cause organizations to scrutinize the amount of travel that they do. I mean, certainly some industries, sales industries especially, certainly have more of a vested interest and need to have that more interpersonal relationship, more of that face-to-face meeting, which I do agree is probably the biggest thing that's been impacted as a result of the pandemic. But organizations are going to continue to scrutinize more and more what essential travel means. What does that look like? And I think they're going to tighten down those policies because they've realized that they can be as effective doing video conferencing, and as a result, that essential travel scope is going to become even smaller.
Yeah, and Todd, I think you've already kind of answered some of this question that I was about to ask, but it was, what does return to the office really look like when COVID-19 is under control? And I think you've already hit on some of those bullet points right there.
Yeah, I certainly think it's going to differ based upon vertical organization, et cetera. I think we're going to see some return to the office, but in a smaller capacity. I think sales types of capabilities or organizations are going to return much greater amounts to that more traditional approach, simply because it's some of the foundation of how they conduct their business. And then we're going to see organizations scale back their travel to maybe a tighter essential travel type of scope.
Right.
Well, I guess everything is in everybody's watching what everybody's doing, because I would imagine, just like when some of these companies that we had on our trivia question, when they announced, it tended to be a cascade effect. Some of them started not before they're announcing that they were cutting back travel, or they were going to let people work from home. They started canceling travel, and then they formally announced that they were let people just work home until indefinitely in some cases, but in some other cases until a defined period of time, like next year or the end of the year. All right, Todd, was there something else that we haven't asked you, that we haven't probed your brain, that you just want to throw out there, let our audience know, something that's been percolating and that you think that'd be really relevant for our viewers?
Well, the one thing that I would mention, I kind of touched upon it in the three things that we more or less have learned at assisting customers that I consider to be kind of the primary challenges of the pandemic. And that last one is security. And I think that's been an especially difficult challenge for many organizations that have spent decades building traditional security architectures around people in an office space. And now suddenly those people are no longer in that space. And it's causing them to scramble to be able to reproduce those same security controls in response to greater risk. And we talked about how remote workers are now on their own home networks, which may be unsecured. They may, in some cases, even be using their own PCs, personal computers, as opposed to corporate equipment. All those increases an organization's security risk. And so I guess if you're asking if there's one thing that I would mention would be, from an IT perspective, would be to ensure that you keep security on your radar to effectively manage the increased risk that comes along with the remote workforce.
Absolutely. Yeah. Security is key, right? We've certainly seen that the threats, the type of attacks on networks, and the techniques being used by hackers, and I wouldn't even call them hackers anymore, because these are professional, in many cases, state-sponsored actors that are really targeting companies, and in some cases individuals, because they're looking for the weakest link, right? And folks that are unsecured at home could be a very easy target. No?
Well, absolutely, and what makes it more difficult is that most organizations have suffered from a loss of visibility with the workers working remotely. So again, those security controls they put in place to allow that inspection and visibility, that awareness of what's transpiring on their network, has been lost with the exodus of people to remote workplaces. And as such, you have, to your point, which is absolutely correct, you have a higher risk from the nature of how those people are conducting and integrating with or interacting with corporate networks. And at the same time, you have reduced or a loss of visibility in terms of risks that may be emerging as a result of that. And so it's definitely impacting in a bad way the compromise rate for organizations.
Excellent. Well, thanks for giving us some knowledge. But before we let you go today, Todd, we've got a few questions that we want to ask, and we like asking our guests when they come on the show, just so that people get a little flavor of who they are, how they think, what's on their mind. So we've got 4 rapid fire questions for you. Let's start off with the first one. Who is your favorite musician or musical group right now?
Wow. Okay. Well, this one's going to both date me and probably earn me some ridicule, but I would say Night Ranger, which you probably never heard of.
You got me on that one.
No,
you got me on that one. I was hoping you said Bad Bunny. My kid loves Bad Bunny.
I'm an '80s guy. That's my era.
Same here, Todd. You're in good company.
All right. So next one. What is your favorite app on your phone right now?
Probably Alexa.
Oh, okay.
I'm a new Alexa convert. It took me a little while. My background is in security, so I tend to be a little distrustful of the whole IoT thing for a number of years. But I've recently embraced it, and so I've been kind of buried in setting up routines and integrating with my alarm system, etc.
So Alexa, is she talking back to you though, or does she say, "Hi Todd, good morning. How are you? How was your day?" Or it's just one way right now? It's a one-way conversation.
Well, she just answers my questions. That's all, or enacts the commands I ask her, the things I ask her to do. She enables them.
They haven't.
I was
Go
just
ahead,
going to
Dave.
say, so the Alexa app, we have an Alexa. I don't have the app on my phone. My 15-year-old has it on his, and when he's not at the house, he likes to send funny messages and music and things my way because he knows I'm in the house and I can hear it. So don't let your teenagers have the Alexa app.
Don't let the kids have the app.
No, they drive you nuts.
What's neat is we got one for my wife's parents. My father-in-law likes to listen to music on it, but what it's also done is it's enabled some real cool communication with the drop-in and so forth. You can easily send them messages about if you're running late and you're supposed to be coming by. So it's really kind of one of those technology that as you use it, it really starts to get you to think out of the box.
Yeah, no, it's fun.
So Amazon is onto something. I haven't gone full in on Alexa yet. I like you from a security perspective. I have a background in that. I have some concerns. Amazon's doing a great job with Alexa, and I think it's going to just keep getting better. It keeps getting better area, but somehow I know they're going to go full robot, and at some point, she's going to start talking back, and that's when I'm going to be creeped out.
When she starts thinking for you, that's the time to start to get worried.
Yeah. Well,
when she starts criticizing your every move, you know that they've
anticipating what you're about to ask her.
Well, I don't know if you've seen I'm sure that maybe you've seen the clip of, I think it's Boston Dynamics with the robots that dance and they move, and that's just simply amazing how far the technology has come where a robot can dance. They could barely walk before. Now they're dancing. So maybe we've gone full iRobot with Will Smith, where they eventually be cooking and doing chores and that kind of stuff.
Oh, I could get into that.
Especially right now.
Useful purposes like that, absolutely.
Oh, I don't know about you, but I've done so many dishes to last me a lifetime. Just every day has been dishwashing. But anyways, I want to ask you just 2 more questions. And while we're on this, what's your favorite type of food?
My favorite type of food is pasta, without a doubt.
Pasta with chicken or with Italian style?
Spaghetti and meatballs, mustacholi, lasagna, manicotti. I mean, I'm open to all the most, major areas of pasta, uh, uh, and typically eat too much of them.
And you're in Chicago?
I am.
Oh my God, some great food. Oh man, some the Publican. I don't know if you've been there. I don't even know if they're still open. There's a big fat pig sitting on the top, and they roast. Oh, anyways, we'll talk about that off air. Great food, just great food town. I love. And this is why I would love to just go. I'm like, yes, I'll see you next week. I'm there for visiting clients, and we'll catch them something to eat. So, pasta. I'll keep that one in mind. And lastly, what's your preferred method of communication? Email, text, phone call, or instant message /DM?
Well, it's interesting the answers you gave me. So I'll tell you the one that is my preferred method of communication, which is face to face. I mean, for me, there's no replacement for having a conversation with somebody directly. Not just from a being able to talk through something, but also just the physical, the social interaction, the relationship aspect. However, if you remove that from the equation, I'm definitely not a phone guy. I'm definitely an email guy.
Interesting. Every guest that we've had on has a different take on it. And I'm just generally curious as to how people are communicating, because there's so many things, so many choices now. I remember coming out of college, I didn't have a cell phone. There was no cell phone. And now the kids have cell phones in, high school, middle school. Yep. So I just like to hear how our guests like getting their communication on. So I want to thank Todd. Thank you, Todd, for joining us today, being on the show.
Thanks, Todd.
I drop in knowledge. We love it. We nerded out a bit. Hey, Ori, do we still have that nerd alert? Just to play that nerd alert again. Could you? Oh, okay. All right. We don't have it queued up, so don't worry about it. So I want to thank you, Todd, and everybody else at Nitel that helped make this come this come together. So thank you, Todd, and Emily, and everybody else that helped out. Joe, that were all part of this. So thank you very much. And before we wrap up, there's two things we want to let you know. First, or roll it, Ori, to the slide with the upcoming show. So we did today's show with Todd. The next one, we will be moving to Tuesday to help more viewers watch our show. A lot of you let us know that midweek was best. So we're going to come to you on Tuesday, starting this Tuesday, the 16th. And we have a special product feature with the Polycom Sync. We're going to, let me find a good word for it. Well, we're going to pour water all over it, and we're going to see if it actually keeps ticking. It's supposed to be waterproof, but we're gonna keep these manufacturers honest. So if you want to see what happens when you pour gallons of water on a speakerphone, you'll want to tune in.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that show with those new devices from Poly.
Right, you need a good device to go with good networks, right, Todd?
Absolutely.
All right, and we have those featured as well in the carousel. So if you're watching us on Amazon, you have the ability to check out those devices. We have great quality speakerphones, the Poly, the EPOS. We also have wireless headsets as well, and a plethora of other devices. You like that word, Dave? Yeah. Plethora. So we've got a bunch of stuff in our Amazon store available for just reach out to us. You got questions, we'll help you out. Our staff is here to guide you through your purchase, whether you're buying a few headsets or you're buying stuff for the entire office and everybody's remote. We can help guide you through that journey. So let's close with the trivia question. During COVID-19, which of these 5 companies, Facebook, Shopify, Google, Microsoft, or Twitter, was the first to announce that workers could go home and essentially work from now, or from when they announced forward? Ori, let's reveal the. Oh, wait. Hold up. Let me ask Todd. Todd, who do you think was the first one to announce?
I guessed Google.
You guessed Google. All right. Let's show the answer to the audience. Microsoft.
Wow, Microsoft.
They were first to acknowledge that workers could work from home moving forward right when the pandemic started really taking off. That was April 1st. And then all the rest of these players pretty much started announcing in May when I think, it wasn't going away. We would have thought that it would have been away in May, but it didn't. So all of these made some type of formal announcement. We have the source there. That's from LifeShack. They keep track of some of this stuff. So there you go. And I want to remind everybody that's watching us today to join us, keep the conversation going on Facebook, on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're on all those platforms, right? And so if you have questions or comments, like, subscribe, hit all the bells, whistles, and buttons. We'll give you a shout out as well for following us. So we want to thank everybody. Dave, any last words?
Nope. We'll see everybody on Tuesday. Thank you so much. Todd, really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me on today.
All right. We'll see you on Tuesday, everybody.
All right.
Have a good weekend.